welcome to another episode of Early Bird Anime with Meg and Dan. I'm Dan,
And I'm Meg.
and today you gotta get your umbrellas out. You don't want to get those ramble pants wet and get shrinkage because today the topic of our discussion is very rainy because we watched a little movie called Garden of Words, and real emphasis on little. Meg, would you like to deliver a little bit of background information?
Yes, it's a very short movie. It's, as Daniel said, it's only 45 minutes. It's called Garden of Words, or the Japanese is Koto no Ha no Niwa. It's a romance drama movie that was written, directed, and edited by Shinkai Makoto, who also was responsible for 5 centimeters per second, if anyone knows about that. I've heard of it, but never watched it myself. The animation was done by Comics Wave Films, and was distributed through Toho, which you might recognize some certain titles of theirs called Godzilla and Gamera. The setting of the movie is Shinjuku Gyoen National Garden, which is a real place that is really real. Production of the movie only took 6 months, which is really incredible considering how amazing it looks. And the film debuted at the Gold Coast Film Festival in Australia on April 28, 2013, and was released in Japan that May. It went on to win the 2013 Kobe Film Award and received much praise online after it was released through iTunes. Daniel, would you like to give a plot breakdown? There are going to be massive spoilers in this, by the way.
This will be more of a whole summary of the entire movie. It's only 45 minutes, so it's kind of fitting. Takao Akizuki is a 15-year-old amateur cobbler who cuts from school whenever it rains. After walking to the Shinjuku Gyoen Gardens, he meets a woman who also seems to be cutting from work. She throws back a few beers and a couple chocolate bars as they sit down and enjoy each other's company. As the rainy season takes its toll on the country, the two find themselves coming to the gardens every day, cutting from work and class. They start to warm up to each other and sort of open up in what their lives are about. Sort of.
Well, kind of.
Kinda. When the rainy season ends, though, Takao returns to school and he dedicates his vacation time, to working, trying to further his cobbling. Meanwhile, the woman returns to the park every day because she suffers from an extreme bout of depression. She can't seem to catch a break in life, it appears. Summer break ends and Takao returns to school with his friends. They're talking about class when he realizes that the woman he's been sitting next to for months, maybe weeks, I don't know about that, but whatever amount of time, is actually one of the teachers at his school, and she was cutting her work because some of her students were spreading rumors about her having an affair with one of the students, and she couldn't take it, so she began cutting school.
And the school was like refusing to.
Yeah, the school refused to make a comment or even side with her. So on another rainy day, the two find themselves caught in the garden, convening after really Takao realizes that she's a teacher. The teacher assumedly knew that Takao was a student.
She
there.
did.
In the beginning, recognizing a patch on his shirt. So caught in a huge downpour, they run over to Yukino's apartment. That's her name, by the way, Yukino. To her apartment, where Takao reveals that he has extreme amorous feelings for her. Yukino, while very moved by it, has to remind him that she is a teacher, and it would be highly unprofessional and taboo for the both of them.
Also, Tako is 15.
Takao
and
is 15.
She is 27.
Yeah, she's 27. There's the age difference there. Takao leaves the apartment suddenly, and Yukino realizes her error and tries to chase him down, where Takao goes on to berate her about never opening up to him and letting himself be open to so many, I guess, opportunities for heartbreak. So Yukino finally collapses into Takao's arms, and the two weep in the rain, saying how got each other through life and helped each other learn to walk again. The ending line, I believe, by Yukino is, "You saved me. You showed me how to walk again."
Mm-hmm.
Meg, what did you think of Garden of Words?
Well, first off, I think it should be said that I am not generally a fan of romance as a genre, and I know you're really not too.
No.
So I went into this knowing that it was billed as a romance movie. I hadn't seen it before, but I wanted to see it because, ever since it came out, I've been seeing images of the animation, and the animation looked absolutely gorgeous, and it definitely did not disappoint on that front. Like, all of the backgrounds were so detailed and beautiful, and I loved how prominent nature was as a visual theme throughout this. You know, they were meeting in this really beautiful national park. The character designs were kind of generic, but I really did like the amount of detail that went into all of the settings, and it was impressive because they actually had like reflected light on the characters, which you almost, I don't think I've ever really seen that kind of thing except for in very rare occasions. So visually it was absolutely stunning. The artwork was great. The scoring was really beautiful. They had these like piano motifs that would play throughout. The cinematography was really nice. They had some really nice angles. It did a really good job at capturing this atmosphere of like melancholy and loneliness. It had a really quiet, maybe ethereal feel to it. However, I was not really satisfied in terms of the story. The relationship made me pretty uncomfortable considering that the teacher is, for one, his teacher, and for another is almost twice his age.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought it was nice in the first section, like the first portion of the movie where they were just kind of spending time in each other's company. I did like what the story was kind of trying to go for with these two kind of lonely people sort of opening up to each other and helping each other through a difficult time in their life. But I had some problems with the way it went, and I think for me where it started to nosedive was the point in the story where you find out Yukino's backstory and the stuff that happened with her at school.
Yeah.
I'll stop for now and turn it
Yeah.
over to you for a minute.
I had similar thoughts about it. I, like Meg said, do not like romance stuff. I get really annoyed anytime. Even like it's very rare that I find something that has a healthy depiction of it. And I'm the kind of person that like to see like a James Bond movie where like James Bond has serious repercussions for being so liberal with his mates and his promiscuity. Like he has to go to a doctor. He's like, I don't know what happened, man. And this is my James Bond impression. I don't know what happened, but but no. So yeah, it sort of bothered me that way. Like Meg, I also liked the animation. I immediately picked up that like certain bits of it were definitely lifted right from reality. Like in one of the opening scenes, the kid's walking over a wooden bridge. And I'm like, oh, that's probably real wood. I can tell that. I thought the story was interesting. While I was watching it during the first half, I thought it would be a really interesting short story. It reminded me of a couple short stories I had read in the past.
Actually, there was a novel adaptation.
Yeah, there was a novel adaptation, so I think maybe I would have enjoyed the novel adaptation as well. But this was like it was all right, and like you said, it really nosedived in the second half. I liked where it was going in the first part because it seemed that they were just enjoying each other's company, rather than like there being something bigger going on. And then at the end, the kid's like, "I love you." So I was like, "Oh, really?"
Although there was no big dramatic kiss scene.
No, and I'm actually happy about that. Even though I'm sure it's like, "I love you," and this kid would probably want to. He never. It should be mentioned that both characters have these narration, like noir narration sort of bits. So you never get like a moment where the kid's saying, "Man, she was really beautiful, and I just want to kiss her" or something, or the woman being like, "I don't know why I was so compelled to him," but in one scene. At the very end, the boy says, "I love you. I'm sorry, but I just had to get that off my chest. I had to say it." And I like that he just said, "I love you," because in a way, I saw it as maybe possibly being like, I really love you, but beyond like the physical nature of love. Like, it's not like, I think you're really hot. Like, he could have said, like, I think you're really pretty and I like you. A la like every 15-year-old would do. So I actually kind of like that as well. The story, it kind of fell flat for me, and I think you said that as well. So we can talk about the actual relationship, like how it develops throughout the story.
Yeah, sure. So they have this really big theme on feet and shoes and learning to walk. You see Takao designing shoes all the time, and Yukino at one point is kind of helping him in that he sort of indirectly asks to use her foot as a model for these shoes that he's trying to design. And you have the whole ending scene where it's like, you helped me learn how to walk again when I was in this really bad place in my life. And he was kind of like, I was learning to walk too, in terms of kind of, I guess, getting acquainted with adulthood.
I
I'm not
this is
super sure.
yeah.
This is where I start getting problems, because Yukino's backstory, I thought, well, I guess I felt it was a little bit cliched, like, oh, these girls are spreading rumors about her having an affair with a student because the guy got a crush on her. So now we have to, ruin the teacher's life, the teacher who had nothing to do with it, because I'm like some catty high school girl.
Yeah, and speaking of the catty high school girl, the best scene in the whole movie is when Takao realizes that there was a rumor spread about this person that he genuinely likes. And he's like, well, he doesn't say this, but he goes and confronts the girl who started the rumor. And he's like, did you know Miss Yukino's leaving? And she's like, whatever, I don't care about that slut. And then Takao, in I think the most progressive display, completely slaps this girl across the face in the middle of all of her friends. So then he gets the crap beaten out of him. And I was like,
Of course he does.
and I watched that scene at like 2 a.m. and I was like, what? You can't do that.
But nothing ever really happened with that. It's like, are you
No,
trying?
that was like the dumbest scene. Like,
It
because
was
nothing
like, are you
happened.
trying to make things worse for the teacher? Because he got all defensive, and the other students were like, oh, what, do you like her too? Maybe she'll take interest in you now. And I was just like, how is this helping anything?
Well, what was he trying to like achieve is one of the things, and I think this is an interesting. We can segue it into the nature of the love in his relationship. He goes and like slaps this girl across the face, unprompted, really. Like he just did it because he was angry. So,
Right.
in my mind, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong or maybe enlighten me, it sounded like he was really doing it for him, like
He was.
not for her. He gets slapped, and like this guy's like, "You should probably quit before I beat the crap out of you." And he's like, "No," and he keeps trying to like fight back, and he keeps getting like the crap kicked out of him. But he already made his point by slapping that girl across the face. Like, what more does he want to achieve? It was sort of like a pointless scene. Because he wasn't trying to specifically accomplish anything. Like, it wasn't like, oh, this girl has information and I want to get it out of her, or so-and-so. Or I was trying to make her feel bad.
It was just, I'm trying to make myself feel better.
Yeah, I'm trying to make myself feel better, and that is not a very healthy thing to do in general. But the nature of the relationship, by the end of the movie, I was sort of scratching my head at because, well, first of all, the huge 12-year age difference, that's just something that's inherently creepy to me.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's interesting to examine what each person gets out of the relationship. And at the end of the movie, Yukino says, "You taught me how to walk again. You pulled me out of the darkness, and
you saved me.
You saved me." And I don't think Takao says like you did the same for me, but they're both like deeply moved and affected by each other. But you see, Yukino was like, "You saved me," but
Takao didn't seem to be impacted quite as much by this relationship as she did.
No.
And it's interesting because you would think that with a 12-year age gap, the older person would kind of have a power. They have the power of experience, almost twice as much experience as the other person. Not to mention the fact that Yukino knew he was a student the whole time and withheld that from him. So that's kind of another issue. But the thing is, I kind of felt in the end that it was just another one of those, oh, here's this poor, sad, helpless woman who, it's a good thing this guy was here to kind of pull her back out of her horrible depression and make her feel like she's worth something again, because she couldn't possibly have managed to do it by herself. And I mean, personally, I'm not really happy with that dynamic because, she was dealing with like a genuinely really horrible thing, and I don't blame her at all for trying to avoid this place that was not lifting a finger to help her. She, I guess, had been dating one of the other teachers, and that teacher just kind of hopped on the rumor bandwagon and didn't believe anything she said. I don't blame her at all. But the thing is, she was talking about how she was learning to walk by sitting alone under a gazebo drinking beer and refusing to face her problems. That doesn't really seem like learning to walk. That seems like just kind of running away and refusing to face your problems. And you could say that the learning to walk part was when Takao came and she was interacting with him and, finding someone who was actually treating her like a person, because this person didn't have any kind of clue as to what had gone on with her because he was too busy skipping school
Yeah.
with his head in the shoe cloud. But it didn't really feel like it had a lot of balance because Takao, he had his dream of being
A cobbler.
a shoemaker. And I think this would have been a little bit better executed maybe if you had seen him having more misgivings about that dream of his. If you had seen people in his life actively putting him down and putting his dream down, you see that he doesn't really want to show his designs to people, but he's still.
But she was never like, oh, well, she's like, let me see. He's like, no, you can't. And then that's the end of that.
But then she saw anyway, and he was like, oh, you're the first person I've shown this to.
Yeah.
But the point is, Takao was very driven pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
He was working really hard at part-time work after school and on vacations in order to earn money for tuition to go to a vocational school. He was devoting a lot of his free time to designing and making shoes. He was already going somewhere, and maybe his interactions with Yukino kind of led to a little bit of extra encouragement that he needed to really pursue that. But we don't really see that because we don't really see him being in a low place and getting risen up in the same way that she does.
No. It's like, yeah, he was already really on the course of becoming a cobbler, like you said. The only obstacle in his way was just money, it seemed.
Yeah.
So I'd say his, I guess, struggles were much more on the surface of things. Like, they weren't as internalized as, say, Yukino's.
Right.
Where she was like, I'm suffering from depression. That's something that lies within. It doesn't always show outwardly. I'm struggling with my sense of self after my boyfriend is encouraging me to quit and leave home and or go back home, rather. It's just interesting to see what each person does for each other's needs, I guess,
Right. And it's interesting because in that sense, if you follow along with that, Takao is really the one that has all of the emotional power.
Yes.
And I think this is kind of exemplified in the last scene where he confesses.
Yeah.
And
then he lashes out.
She kind of very gently reasserts that professional boundary between them. He says, I have feelings for you. He addresses her by her name, and she says, it's Miss Yukino, remember? And he gets very quiet, and then he just kind of stands up and is like, bye, I'm going home now. And walks out the door, and she sits there and she cries, and then she makes up her mind and gets up and runs out. There's this really dramatic scene where she's like running barefoot down the stairs and, slipping, and then she finds him and he starts just yelling at her. He's like, you know what? I changed my mind. I hate you after all. And at this point, I was like, what the heck are you doing? I understand that he was lashing out in anger and that this was ultimately more about his own insecurities than her.
But I think the problem was he never really seemed insecure that much. Like, he was just, I don't want to show anyone my drawings. But he was never like, I'll never be a good cobbler. He's more like, I gotta keep practicing to be a good cobbler.
Yeah.
And that. In his insecurity of liking her, he wasn't, because he never brought it up in his narration. And then he finally came out with it very confidently, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of weird. It's just the whole final, I'm gonna call it the final battle, really, because it was pretty relentless. He was like, you know what? I don't even like you anymore because you're a jerk. And it's like, oh my gosh.
And I mean, he did bring up legitimate faults with her character, like, oh, she doesn't stand up for herself. She doesn't really say anything she feels. But like, what? I was kind of thinking, how is this any different from what the other kids at school did? Where the girl was like, my boyfriend has a crush on you, so I'm going to ruin your life. And now Takao is like, you rejected me, so I'm going to walk out and then yell about how awful you are, despite my promise of like emotional support and presence not 5 minutes ago in movie time.
Yeah.
And at that point I was like, you know what, you're both awful people, and I'm mad at both of you.
Yeah. You two belong together. Together. To Jedward.
So, he pretty much just threw his emotional support in her face when she rejects him romantically.
Yeah, which is also another indication of a very unhealthy relationship where I understand, like, okay, I'm a little upset because I think we really had something going here.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say it's unnatural for someone to lash out, but he was seriously, like, you have to watch the scene because he was like relentless and she's like sobbing, and it's also raining too, so it's like the sky's crying too.
And so was
And
he.
so is
Everyone
he.
was crying.
It's
It was
like
miserable.
everyone. It's like when you see two people who are dating and they really have like they're just always arguing, but you know that if they both broke up, they'd be like complete messes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think one thing I'd like to bring up is that you saw it in the intended way in the Japanese language. I was unable
Yes.
to because whatever thing I was watching it on wouldn't like load for me. It wouldn't work, so I had to watch the English version. And I'd say most of the voice acting was good, except for one character, which was Takao's brother, which I'd like to discuss
Yes.
because he was radically different in my version than in your version.
Oh,
So I want you
definitely.
give your version first, and I'll give mine.
Well, it was really funny because the brother kind of comes in and he's a kind of window into Takao's family life.
Yeah, he's like a salaryman, sort. I assume.
It's really interesting because the brother was, he would make these snide little comments, but they never really read as anything other than just kind of like, I guess, innocent jabs
Well, how?
at
Well, both
your
the
family.
language and the way it was delivered, right?
Yeah, so
Because
you would have comments like, they were talking about their mom and the brother made some comment like, "Oh, she's not one to talk when she's, running around with guys so much younger than her anyway." Or Tako helps him move in with his girlfriend and he leaves and the girlfriend's like, "Oh, your brother is so cute." And the brother's like, "Oh, yeah, by the way, did you see his shoes? They're handmade." She's like, "No way." And he's like, "Yeah, well, I mean, they're just some ugly moccasins though." And she's like, "Oh, maybe he'll make me some shoes." And the brother's like, "Oh, I don't know about that. You know how teenagers are about their goals. Kind of wishy-washy."
yeah, mine was very different. Mine was the same scenes, obviously, but the brother says, "I'm gonna move in with my girlfriend," and the mom was not there at that point. She was out with her boyfriend. So then Takao finally put it together. He's like, "That's why mom's not here, because she's mad that you're moving in with your girlfriend." And then for some reason, the brother gets mad at Takao. And he's like, I wish you just learned that we aren't kids anymore, and you should grow up. That it's like, where is this coming from? Also, I am still a kid because I'm 15. So he got like really like pithy like at him. I'm like, what? Where is this coming from? And then the scene where he's helping his brothers and his girlfriend move into their place. There's the same thing where the girlfriend's like, "Oh, your brother's really cute. I like him." And then the brother's like, "Yeah, if you don't look below his ankles," which I actually
That's
like.
so
I
mean.
like that line at first because it made like it's funny because it's like the actor delivered all of his lines well, but it just didn't match the way it looked on his face because he was like smiling in most of these scenes, but
Yeah.
he was saying everything like really like mean. But it's like this is not how you'd look if you'd say this. So the girl's like, "Whoa, he made those shoes? Maybe he'd make me a pair." And it's like, "Oh, come on, let's be honest here. He's no artist." It's like, wow, all right. I guess I got a completely different brother than what Meg got.
Yeah, completely. Like the brother in the Japanese version, he made those snide little comments, but they didn't really feel mean-spirited. They weren't delivered in like a nasty way. It was just kind of poking fun at his family, I guess.
Yeah, it was more. I think the word we used was humorously not exacerbating.
Yeah,
But
yeah, like mild exasperation, but not
exasperation.
but not unfond.
Yeah,
And that I think that would have been a really interesting thing. Like if the brother had been more blatantly dismissive of his dreams, then that could have been a way to kind of lead into Tako's
yeah.
insecurities.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
it was all in all, it was a very strange movie because it did things I liked in the first half a lot, and then like you said, by the time you find out that Yukino is a teacher, it kind of like the story takes a nosedive. Like initially, I liked that Yukino was more irresponsible than Takao. She's
Mhm.
cut. They both cut from school and work. Well, from school, both of them. But Takao is still very driven. He set this goal of cutting, but it is almost in a very responsible way. Like as if he was a drinker. Like I only will cut school when it rains. I'll go to school any other day, but if it rains, I'm gonna cut class. And when it stops raining, I go back to school. Or how during summer vacation, when everyone's off having fun, he's like, "No, I'm really driven at this cobbling thing, and I don't want to screw up on it. So I'm gonna work all these odd jobs. I'm gonna do this." He has other skills too, like he knows how to cook really well because just offhand he works in like a some sort of restaurant. So he inadvertently picks up on that skill, or he picks up on this, and he's very industrious. And Yukino is still going to the park in the summer and drinking beers and eating chocolates. And even when it's not raining, So you get this sense of people maturing at different levels, and Takao is very mature for his age, and Yukino, you could argue, is very immature. And I kind of like that, this sort of goal that people have of being, when you're supposed to be this by this age, you're supposed to be grown up, or you're supposed to be this youthful by this age.
Right.
And that's not the case, but a lot of people think it is. So it's really interesting to see, and they're both not doing it for whatever reason. Like, they're just both naturally. Takao is a hard worker, and Yukino is immature in how she handles her things.
Right.
But it gets to be unhealthy when Takao shows feelings for her for multiple reasons, as we've already listed off. And it was also, I think what irked me a little bit was, we talked about it enough, but that she was the helpless woman, sort of, in the relationship. You need to bring me out of this. You helped me out. All of the impact of the relationship was really on her. To him, what he got out of the relationship was a book on how to make shoes.
Yeah.
And his first pair of real shoes. But once again, that's a more on the surface thing. He was pretty static as a character. He was flat.
Yeah.
His arc was that he finally learned how to make a shoe. Yukino's was overcoming her depression, finding love, and also leaving it, but still being impacted by it a great deal. I don't know.
Well, I guess if we were to conclude, personally, I would say that, well, the artwork was gorgeous, and I definitely don't regret watching it on that account. But as we discussed, I have major issues with the story, and I was honestly pretty uncomfortable with the relationship pretty much most of the way through. And, maybe it's because I'm biased. Maybe I would have had a better reception of it if it was not billed as a romance movie.
Honestly, I think if you cut the movie at the point where they both had to leave because the rain season was going to end, that I think would be a good conclusion. And then maybe as like a denouement, you have like realizing that she's a teacher and they both silently like pass each other. That would be, I think, a good natural conclusion to it, because you don't really need the rest of the romance stuff.
Right. I would probably just cut out like the confession, and if it's what's wrong with friendship,
Yeah, well, it's like it. I don't know. It's an interesting case. It's like romance, like we've said, we don't really like it. I don't, because I find a lot of stuff unhealthy. I think it gets in the way of the action, the meat and the potatoes of the story, whatever you want to call it. I get so annoyed if I'm watching an action movie and then someone stops to be like, I might not make it out alive, but I really want to put my pee-pee in your pee-pee. And it's like, okay, come on.
It's just really shoehorned in and rushed and not developed.
Yeah,
and I mean this one had the excuse of, it's a romance movie, so this is something that's going to be built up to the whole time, but I don't know. I still didn't really enjoy the story that much for the reasons we discussed, but it's really short. So if you're an animation fan, then I definitely recommend watching it, or if you just want to look and listen to something really pretty for a while.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a huge undertaking.
It had a lot of potential, I think.
It had a lot of potential, and it had a lot of really nice moments.
It's really I'd say, I called it artsy-fartsy by one point, but it was a lot of sort of artful things going on, like using shoes as a metaphor for standing on one's own life, or having the age difference be there, or having rain being a big motif of maybe a contrast of most people get sad when it's rain. Rain is used as a negative thing, but these people love rain. It symbolizes, oh, I get to see so-and-so today, or I get to run away from my problems today. It's interesting. And they also have like a Tonka subplot going on in there, and there's a lot of stuff going on, but after a while you're just like, they're reaching.
It's beautifully, I guess, executed, but I feel like the substance of it doesn't really live up to my, I guess, standards for it. And maybe my standards are just way too high, but that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel about it as well.
I think that probably wraps it up for this episode, so thank you so much for listening, and if you would leave a like or a comment, let us know if you agree with us, if you think we're just a bunch of curmudgeons who can't appreciate a good romance story, or, even subscribe if you like what we're talking about. So We have been Discount Ramblepants with Early Bird Anime.
And remember that making shoes is the only thing that will lead us out of this place. So artistic. So artsy. So fartsy. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye and thanks.